April 1845. Conference Minutes. Special Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at Nauvoo, April 6, 1845, it being the first day of the 16th year. The choir sang Hark the Jubilee at 10:15, while the assembly was collecting. Present, President Brigham Young, Heber C. Kimball, Orson Hyde, Orson Pratt, George A. Smith, John Taylor, John E. Page, Willard Richards, and Amasa Lyman of the Quorum of the 12. Father John Smith, President of the Stake. Bishops Whitney and Miller, the High Council, and about 22,000 persons. Elder Kimball called the meeting to order at 10:30 a.m., and the choir sung the 31st hymn, followed by prayer by Elder Kimball. The choir then sang, Come all ye sons of Zion. The morning was spent in teaching on the baptism for the dead by President Young, which will be hereafter reported in full. Conference adjourned until 2 o'clock. 2:00 p.m. Conference met pursuant to adjournment, the forepart of which was taken up by the blessing of children, but owing to the immense number it was found impossible to complete the whole, when it was accordingly dispensed with, and the remainder of the afternoon was occupied in exhortation from the stand, by Elder Page and President Young, and the conference adjourned until tomorrow at 10:00 a.m. April 7, 1845, 10:00 a.m. Conference met pursuant to adjournment. After the conference was seated, in consequence of the high wind, it was thought best to remove into the valley a little south, and the whole of this immense congregation was moved, and comfortably seated in the short space of about 40 minutes. The choir sang the Heavenly Vision, and was followed by prayer by Elder John Taylor, after which the choir sang another hymn. Elder Kimball then arose and stated to the congregation some of the items of business which would be necessary to attend to during the day, viz. The building of the temple and the Nauvoo house, also to take into consideration all old obligations against the church, which are pouring in like a torrent, also to ascertain the feelings of the people in regard to sustaining the authorities of the church under the present organization. President Brigham Young then arose, and said he would now present the first item of business, which would be to present the authorities of the church for the approval or disapproval of the conference. He also said he wanted to know if the saints are satisfied that Joseph Smith lived and died as a prophet, seer, and revelator to this church. Whereupon Elder Phelps moved that we accept the labors of Joseph Smith as a prophet, seer, and revelator to the 19th century, and that we are satisfied that he lived according to his profession and died a martyr to the truth. Carried unanimously. Elder Phelps moved that we accept the labors of Hiram Smith, believing that he lived according to his profession and died a martyr to the truth. Carried unanimously. Elder Phelps moved that this conference accept the 12 as the first presidency and leaders of this church. Carried unanimously. Elder George A. Smith moved that we acknowledge President Brigham Young as the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles to this church and generation. Carried unanimously. Elder George A. Smith moved that Heber C. Kimball be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Orson Hyde be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Parley P. Pratt be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that William Smith be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Orson Pratt be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that John E. Page be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Willard Richards be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that John Taylor be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Wilford Woodruff be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that George A. Smith be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Amasa Lyman be continued as one of the 12, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. The chairman then observed, concerning the course of Lyman Wight, His feelings are that we should let him remain for the present. Probably hereafter there may be a time that he will hearken to counsel and do much good which he is capable of, for he is a noble-minded man. The chairman then stated that the next article of business would be to present to the conference the presidency of the stake, moved and seconded that Patriarch John Smith continue in his office as president of this stake, and that he be sustained in his office. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Charles C. Rich be continued and sustained in his office of counsel to Father Smith. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that George Miller be continued and sustained in his office as president of the High Priest's Quorum. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that William Snow and Noah Packard be continued and sustained in their office as counselors to President Miller. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Samuel Bent be continued and sustained in his office as President of the High Council. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that George W. Harris, Alpheus Cutler, William Huntington Sr., James Allred, Henry G. Sherwood, Thomas Grover, Newell Knight, Lewis D. Wilson, David Fulmer, Ezra T. Benson, and Aaron Johnson be continued and sustained in their office as members of the High Council. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Joseph Young be continued and sustained as president of the First Presidency of the 70s. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Levi W. Hancock, Henry Harriman, Zira Pulsifer, Jedediah M. Grant, and Daniel S. Miles be continued and sustained in their office as assistant presidents to President Joseph Young. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that if Roger Orton will perform and become a good man, he be received and ordained as a member of this presidency. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Samuel Williams be continued and sustained in his office as the president of the Elders' Quorum. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Jesse Baker and Joshua Smith be continued and sustained as counselors to President Williams. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Newell K. Whitney and George Miller be continued and sustained in their offices as bishops and trustees in trust to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Carried unanimously. Moved and seconded that Alpheus Cutler and Reynolds Cahoon be continued and sustained as Temple Committee. Carried unanimously. On the subject of the old church debts coming, it was moved and seconded that the debts of Kirtland and Missouri and the debts that are said to be accrued in consequence of purchasing the Galland tract in Iowa Territory be dropped, and come up no more, and trustees shall be done for them no more forever. Neither shall they be sold into the hands of to the Gentiles. Carried unanimously. Conference then adjourned until 2 o'clock. 2:00 p.m. Conference met pursuant to adjournment. The choir sung a hymn, which was followed by prayer from Elder Orson Pratt, after which the choir sung another hymn, by request of President Young. Elder Orson Pratt read the revelation given January 19, 1841, concerning the building of the temple, Nauvoo House, etc., after which he read an extract from the Law of the Lord, page 240. The chairman then stated that he wanted to lay before the conference the subject of completing the Nauvoo House, whereupon Elder Phelps moved that we fulfill the revelation by completing the Nauvoo House as soon as possible. Carried unanimously. The chairman called for a show of hands from all those who could and would take one share of stock in the Nauvoo House. There were so many hands uplifted that they could not possibly be counted. He next called for a show of hands from those who could and would take 2 shares. Quite a large number of hands were shown. He then called for a show of hands from all, both male and female, who, after they had done all they could to finish the temple, are willing to sacrifice their all to finish the Nauvoo House, rather than not to have it done. Every hand was raised in the congregation. The president then proclaimed to the conference that on next Monday the books for the Nauvoo House Association would be opened in the upper part of the brick store on Water Street. The conference then adjourned until tomorrow at 10:00 a.m. Tuesday, April 8, 1845. Conference met pursuant to adjournment at 10 a.m., and was addressed by Elders Kimball and Young upon the propriety of the saints staying in Hancock County, and in the afternoon Elders Young, Page, and Hyde addressed the assembly. Perfect union and harmony prevailed throughout the conference, and there was but one dissenting vote in the congregation. It was motioned by the president, and henceforth and forever this city shall be called the City of Joseph. Great praise is due to ex-Marshal A.P. Rockwood and his associates for their unwearied exertion to arrange and seat the numberless assembly, for the most perfect order was maintained by them throughout the whole city and the conference, and to the saints universally for seconding their movements. On motion, conference adjourned until the 6th of October next. Brigham Young, President. William Clayton, Thomas Bullock, Clerks of Conference. Elder George D. Watt, whose valuable services to the Church as Professor of Phonography are highly appreciated, has taken down the speeches delivered on this occasion, and they will appear from time to time as circumstances will allow. Willard Richards, Recorder. Never have we seen the time before when the people were more willing to receive and listen to counsel than now. The High Council have only one case in about 7 weeks. Our magistrates have nothing to do. We have little or no use for charter or law. Every man is doing his best to cultivate the ground, and all are anxious to provide things honestly in the sight of all men, to honor our God, our country, and its laws. Whenever a dispute or difficulty arises, a word from the proper source puts it all to right, and no resort to law. May God ever save us from this snare of men, this drainer of the purse, and this fruitful source of contention and strife.